everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Vanissia, this is the Woolly Worker Knitting Podcast, and today I am joining you for a special episode where I will talk all about my UFOs or unfinished objects. I've been wanting to make this kind of video for a while, but the nature of it is that I need to accumulate at least a certain amount of unfinished objects before I can go and review them, and I just kept on finishing things, humble brag, so I didn't have content to speak of. But now I've looked back and I realized that over the last year, I think the most unfinished one is actually a year and a half ago, but it's a tiny item. And most of my big UFOs are actually from the last couple of months. But I thought that I have a big enough range to talk you through those items, review them, brainstorm, problem solve, and ideally motivate myself to finish those UFOs. If that sounds interesting to you, then by all means keep on watching. Before we get into it, a couple of admin things. I will have timestamps in the video description. I think I'm going to organize these by order of how large they are, and I will go from smallest to biggest, so finishing with garments that are maybe a third of the way done, and start with tiny things. But if you want to skip ahead to some parts, you can just go in the description and check that out. There'll be some Ravelry links to the patterns that I mentioned, so that you can go check those out, as well as color names, designer names, etc. And if you want to find me on Ravelry or on Instagram, you can find me at thewoollyworker, as well as on Ko-Fi, if you wanted to donate a little bit to the channel as a thank you, I guess. And what I am wearing, if you were wondering, is the cardigan number 7 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It's a really nice, cozy, comfy, balloon-sleeved cardigan that I made with midnight sole as opposed to mohair, and it still gives a lot of fluff, but it is much more tolerable next to skin. I'm not wearing any sleeves under this, and I really like it. So yeah, I think it's the first time that I'm wearing this as a finished item in the video, and it's nice to wear your knits. I think there's no need for further introduction, so let's just go straight in. I actually also will be talking about swatches. I asked a poll on Instagram if you guys wanted to see these swatches included in this kind of video, and you said yes. So I'll put these at the very end, just for organization's sake. So yeah, let's get started. The first thing that I will then show is my very oldest WIP, and it is The Frog by Claire Garland. Now, if you've been on Instagram or on Ravelry for the last couple of years, you must know what I'm talking about. This frog took the internet by storm, and with good reason. It is adorable. Claire Garland is a designer that is known for designing animal patterns, and she partnered with someone called, I think, Indina Crawford, and she was making little reels and videos of the frog. One of them was Frog making her own, or her making a sweater for the frog, and it was so beautiful and so relaxing to watch, and I think it motivated everybody to make one, including me, but I never was able to finish it. So I started this on July 23rd, 2022, and here is what I have. Oh, so I will try and show this to the camera, but we'll see if it focuses. This is, I mean, it is the body. The entire body is done. It is very wonky now that I'm looking at it. The eyes are not symmetrical, which does bother me and maybe contributed to me not wanting to finish it. The pattern is very well written, and it was my first time working with such small circumference, and like you're knitting flat mostly, but you know, there's like what, 2 stitches at the beginning, and then there's like maybe 8. Like, it's really not a lot, and you do a lot of short rows to shape, and then there's a bit of like threading some yarn and cinching in to shape, to create gaps and ebbs and flows. It's really well thought out and smart, and if you've done, you know, stuffed animal making, you will know what I'm talking about in terms of shaping techniques, and it's less about the knitting and more about those details. So I guess that was a little bit off-putting. Like, the actual body of the frog was very addictive to do and was extremely fast. I think I made that in a day basically, but then I just didn't have it in me to make the legs. So this is what those pins are for. They're for the legs. The eyes as well, like I said, I'm not happy with where I placed them, but to be fair, this is my first try. I'd totally make a few more of these if I was motivated to, because I have a lot of stash yarn that would be perfect for that. I'm using Jemison of Shetland Heritage Spindrift. I'm so sorry. And this is the olive green for the back and some natural white for the belly, but they look really cute in blue or yellow, or you could duplicate stitch to make some markings on them. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and I really wanted to have one of these. Claire Garland has actually just released an addendum to the pattern that explains how to put wire to the legs better. So maybe that's my sign to actually sit at my desk, spend a few more hours, and actually give this bad boy some arms and legs, and then I will just pose it on a desk with his little legs dangling. I think it'll be super cute, and I really, really want to finish that. I want to prove to myself that it's not actually that hard or fidgety and time consuming as I'm imagining it to be, and that way I will make him a little friend, and also make him a little sweater, because of course I was inspired by that adorable video of Froggy getting a sweater. So yes, this is one that I'm extremely motivated to finish, even though he's wonky, and I want to make another one afterwards. So I had to dig this out from way deep under my stash, but now I'm going to leave this in plain view in the hopes that it will motivate me and remind me that it's unfinished. So that was item number 1. Item number 2 is Fisherman's Rib Fingerless Mitts, and it's also with Jamison's of Shetland Spinrift. And it was earlier this year, I was in a mitts kick. I made 3 of them so far. I'll show a photo on screen of what I'm talking about. And they're really easy. It's just Half Fisherman's Rib. It comes from a book from Hilary Grant, which is Knitting from the North. And I really like that book. I've made a few of the patterns, including those mitts, a fair amount of times. They're the perfect accessory that is just so simple and mindless. You make this big square or rectangle, basically a fisherman's rib, and then you sew the edge together with a gap for the thumb. And then I think what's also really attractive about that is that you can make it with less than 1 ball of Jamison, which is extremely affordable for Christmas gift even, for example, and just for leftovers, because you know when you buy those skins of yarn for color work, you might be buying your main color and then 8 contrast colors and then only use a tiny little bit of one, so then it would be excellent to use the rest of that. So this is this case where I bought this color, which is Stonewash, for another project. I think it was also some color work mitts, but because they're mitts and color work, it used nothing, so I have quite a bit left of this. And so I had started to make the mittens, but then I just didn't finish them, so not too sure which one is the right side and which one is the wrong side, so I'll show both. And as you can see, it's even off the needles. I think I was actually kind of motivated to maybe modify the pattern a little bit, maybe work it in the round. I was quite motivated, and that was back in maybe November or December when I just started my podcast, and then I don't know, maybe I just started caring more about the podcast than I did about creating my own self-drafting. So I think this is why I stopped, because I thought that this would be the perfect amount of yarn to just play around instead of just following patterns. So I think I'm gonna not give up on this idea. I will frog this, definitely, but I will try to maybe self-draft some kind of fisherman's rib fingerless mitt, but obviously making it my own, because I've made a fair amount of these and I've modified them a few times, and I have some ideas on how to make it even more my own. And obviously the measurements are always like modifiable based on your gauge and hand size, etc. So I will make up my own numbers. So yeah, I think this is something that I need to do when I have the headspace for, and not just I'm gonna self-draft a mitten pattern. Like, it's not the kind of creative process that I embrace myself. So I will frog this though. There's no need in having a half knitted up rectangle. I need to just frog it. So yeah, frog it. Okay, the next small item is those nutmeg socks by Tanya Barley. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and I actually shared this in one of my very early episodes. So here's the socks. And it was in one of the sections of my podcast that we can kind of call false starts, because I had started this and I can't remember exactly what I said in that podcast episode, but I just hated it, basically. I'm just finding it really difficult to work the stitch pattern on my hands, and I just knew that if it already took me so long to make the ribbing, this is technically like the ribbing, then I had just started the body, as you can see, and I just realized that if it took me so long to do this, I just never was going to finish 1 sock, let alone 2, and it's a shame. I don't like giving up on things. I had this big vision because this is called the nutmeg socks, and this is nutmeg by West Yorkshire Spinner's signature 4-ply. So it just goes really well together, obviously. I think it was the yarn that was called for in the pattern. And I really wanted those socks, but it's already hard for me to motivate myself to do socks. But the stitch pattern is so pretty. I'll try and show you again in detail so you can see. It's got this like mock cable slash twist. Oh, you're in the sun. Sorry. So it's got a mock cable or a twist, and it's hard to reproduce otherwise. Like, you have to use the technique. I think it was difficult because you had to do some kind of like knit 3 together, and you know, with those needles they would need to be very pointy. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-put these on the needles I had used, which was 2mm needles, which is quite small. So I'll put this back on 2mm needles, try a couple more rounds to see if I feel differently about this stitch pattern, or if there's really any way to cheat, or yeah, just try and cheat, or try and see if I still hate it. And if I really just can't, I'll give up and frog, and this yarn will absolutely be reused in other projects because it is a really good workhorse sock yarn and an excellent contrast color to a lot of the self-striping West Yorkshire spinner. So yeah, I'm not mad I bought this yarn, but if I give up on this pattern, I think I'll give up forever because it's just so much effort. And I just would rather do normal cables or lace, because at least that's an easier stitch pattern for the same amount of all over texture result at the end. Next project, that one is a little sadder, and it is the Spring Mittens by Amanda Sund, and it is also a free pattern, and that one I actually started in August 15th, 2022, so just at the same time as the little frog. It was my first summer of knitting actually. And yeah, I was really inspired by one project on Ravelry, so I copied their colors and their little modification. They added a Latvian braid, even though the pattern doesn't have one, and they also added a little color work motif. That one was crazy. I had to even go down to a 1.75mm to get gauge. I didn't even have those needles, I had to buy them. So I'll show you one, and then I'll show you the other one. I was doing them in tandem for motivation. Oh. So yeah, the flowers are on the outside, and then on the inside of the palm you had another color work motif. Some of the rows were 3-stranded color work, which also added to a bit of the feeling about these. And yeah, I mean, I was doing the hard part of keeping track of what I was doing for the first mitten to be able to do it on the second mitten, and it was going well, as well as it could, although, to be honest, my magic loop join isn't the best. I mean, you always get this kind of bulge at the corner. Sorry about the light, but here I'm talking about that. It's just, it's not the prettiest. I mean, they were going to fit, and it would have been great to have. And I absolutely loved those colors. I think even just now looking at it, it's like so pretty and springy, but it's been a year and a half. I don't think I'm going to do them, and it's annoying because I had already gotten all my yarns all like weighed and separated, so here's what I'm working with. But I'm gonna have to just frog and then re-ball them in a neat way, and then I think just destash, because when it comes to color work, I think I still prefer Jameson of Shetland and Jameson and Smith. This is Knit Picks palette, by the way, in Kumquat Heather, Sky, and White. And I think what I'll do is I'll just destash them on my Ravelry probably, or bring them to a knit night, or donate them to a shop. It wasn't too expensive, it was 1 ball of each, and this is quite an affordable yarn. Maybe the white I'll keep as an accent color, because that's like always helpful, but I don't know, because it is a different feeling yarn than the Jameson and Smith. Jameson is like Shetland yarn, and I think this is maybe Peruvian wool from Knit Picks. I'm not quite sure, but they do feel quite different. The ply looks different as well, so I wouldn't feel super comfortable mixing them in a single project. But yeah, this will be frogged. I know why it's taking me so long to do it is because I was loving these. Like, I love the little color work motif here at the bottom that wasn't even part of the pattern, and I love the little Latvian braids. That was a cool skill to learn. It was very effortful and time consuming to do, so that's also why I didn't want to undo them, but needs must. And I'll yeah, I'll not get this project in my life, but that's fine. That's what happens. Next small project is actually a crochet project, and it is the Lily Mosaic Bag by Natalia Kononova. And it really is the beginning of a project. So I'm making this with 4 balls of Sheepius Wurlet. So we've got the color rose, almond butter, grapefruit, and ice. But so far I've only used almond butter. And I bought these on Wool Warehouse and I bought them on sale, so I was being thrifty. And here's what I have so far. It's quite crumpled, but yeah, so this is going to be the bottom of the bag, and it's a nice little backpack you'll see in the photos. And I really wanted to try my hand at this interesting construction and mosaic and finishing touches and sewing a lining. Like, I have friends that sew who offered their help as well with this. And it's made on very small crochet hooks, so it's 2.75. This is a light fingering or a fingering, and yeah, it is time consuming. I was plodding along nicely making this, but then I think I got distracted by other crochet projects, and then I just got too into my knitting, so I gave up on this crochet. But I do want to make the backpack. At some point I kind of regretted the colors, because I think I copied the palette from a project on Ravelry because I loved their photos, and then afterwards I thought, why did I even pick all those pink shades? I don't even love pink. And that was back then, in April 2023. But then now I have slowly gotten into pink as a color, so turns out that works for me, and I'm happier about the color choices now than I was back then, so that worked out well. And I think maybe I need to just power on and finish that bottom, which had gotten super boring, because then the fun part will begin with the actual mosaic and with actually the pinks and more interesting colors than just this beige. So I think what I need to do is indeed just give myself maybe half hour every day, or like a certain amount of rows, even though they get bigger every row, but like some kind of goal that I can do plodding along in the background, and then feel like I came further than I was when I first started this. So yeah, we're not giving up on that one, and I think it'll be very interesting, an interesting item to show on the podcast when there's more to show. Next item is also a little bit of a bummer, and it is the Augusta lace scarf by Kwasi Garade or Bella Helms. This is something that I started back in June. I went to a yarn festival called Tangled Galashiels, and I bought this beautiful skein of 50% yak, 50% silk, and it's 200 meters. And I was looking on Ravelry at what project to make with such yardage and with such special yarn that was quite expensive, and I found this little neck scarf that was more interesting than the Sophie scarf, and that was the right amount of yardage, and it is this Augusta lace scarf. So this is what we have. It's not that much, but it's also not that little. Like, if I made another half of this, it would be the right amount of neck scarf. I'm not quite sure what the Sophie scarf dimensions are. I'm making the size 2 of the pattern out of the 3, so it's not the longest or not the shortest, and I just got bored. You start at the beginning and you make this asymmetrical increases, then you have this rectangle that you just keep going, and you do the repeat of the stitch pattern, and I was finding it quite boring, but also a bit labor intensive, because some of the stitches are twisted and you've got to twist them on the wrong side, so you've got to make twisted pearls, which I think was a bit awkward with this and this size needle and this yarn. There's a little bit of lace, a little bit of twisted stitches, and you have to kind of remember how many rows you do. Like, you have to keep track of the rows before you do the next bit of lace. So it's kind of like the Sophie scarf that some people said wasn't that mindful, because you had to always count your rows or have a good system to know that. And I guess the rows are a little easier to count here, rather, as opposed to the garter stitch from Sophie scarf that I know some people struggle with. But yeah, I don't know. And as you can see, it's also curling inwards very heavily, as you can see here, and it's the inside. And I was hoping that this would block, because I don't want a completely scrunched up scarf. I would like it to drape. So maybe what I could do with this is I could block it to see if this stretches and if it flattens, which I don't really know why it would, because it is technically 90% stockinette, even though there is some pearl rose. But by nature, it will probably just always have a tendency to curl inwards. But I think I'll block it just as a way to make an easier decision. And then I would be fine frogging. I'm not too attached to this scarf. I am attached to the yarn though, so I think that if it didn't work out, if I wasn't happy with the pose block and I didn't have the motivation to continue, I would frog everything that I've done here, and then I would probably just make a little Sophie scarf, because at least that one would be easier to work with in front of the TV or on the bus and things like that, and it would give me the same result, which is a neck scarf, because I don't have any other idea of what to do with this beautiful yarn, and it is so soft that I do really want it on my neck. I could make some kind of cowl maybe if I found something that didn't use that much meterage, but I have been looking at cowls recently and I couldn't really find anything that I wanted. I don't really want color work with that. I want cables or lace, but then cables use more yarn, so less choices. So I think, yeah, block, and then if not, it'll just be a Sophie scarf, which is fine. At least I'll be able to wear this as opposed to having it hidden in my pile of shame. Okay, so the next one is a gift knit, and it is the basic ribbed socks by Kate Atherley. I'm very loosely following this pattern. It's a free pattern, and I bought the yarn at a craft fair, or like not even a craft fair, like a farmer's market, back when I was living across the country with my boyfriend a couple years ago. And I had just gotten into knitting, and someone was selling some little, like, some hand-dyed yarn, some crochet kits. So we bought the yarn there, and I told my boyfriend that one day I would make him something with it. So for his birthday this year in August, I wanted to have them done, but I didn't. So here's the yarn. It's a nice hand-dyed blue. I don't really know if this is a tonal or a variegated, because there's definitely different colors going on. There's some teal, there's some dark blue, and they're interacting in a really pretty way. It's not entirely my style, I think. Like, it's a bit too bright a blue for me, but so it's nice that my boyfriend likes them. And here's where I got to with the sock. So this is the top, and then I had just turned the heel, I think. Yeah, and so yeah, we just turned the heel. We're doing the decreases. I don't know if I'm still decreasing or not. I really need to... I have taken notes on Ravelry, so that's helpful. I'm really grateful for past Vanissia for having the presence of mind to make life easier. Was I ever going to get back to this project? I'm making this on 2.25mm, and the pattern is basically a 3x1 rib, which I thought would be more interesting than just stockinette, but then I regret that. I think it's just more annoying to work than if it was just mindless stockinette. And I was really worried that they were going to be too large. I'm a loose knitter, and rib has a tendency to be even looser for me. So working on these in secret was tricky, and he knows about these now, so what I'm going to do is have him try it on to see if it's even worth continuing. And if it is, then I really just need to hammer down and finish this first sock and then make the second one, hopefully with the notes I have made. I am really curious to see if I was done decreasing. I think I had just finished decreasing, because I've done 3 rounds here after the last decrease. So yeah, the heel was an Eye of Partridge heel. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see much. But yeah, they just seem huge. Like, I used the stitch count was over 70, which normally when I make my 64 stitch socks, they fit my boyfriend. But maybe he doesn't want them as snug as I like mine, and he doesn't mind them being a bit looser. So I really want to make him one other pair of socks. It's been cold lately, and he's been wearing the first pair of socks that I made him, and that makes me feel really good and nice when I see him wearing them. So I really want to make him a second pair, and I've already started, so why not finish? Then I can make him a third pair, and hopefully he'll not be 6 months later after I promise. Okay, so we've now finished all of the small items, and we're going to go straight into garments and almost done projects. The one that is the most almost done, that I started back in June, is the Moonset Tee by Ozetta, and I'm making this with the fiber company Meadow, which is a gorgeous yarn in an amazing color called Prairie, and the yarn is a mix of wool, alpaca, linen, and maybe silk. It's so amazing. It was a little bit pricey, but you just need 2 skeins. So if you can get them on sale, I highly recommend. It's really nice and next to skin soft, but like it looks rustic because of the little flecks of linen. And here was my progress on this. So close to being done. Technically, I could just like make an I-cord, call it a day, and it would be a very cropped t-shirt, but I know I'm not going to wear it as much if I crop it. So yeah, I really need to continue. This is a drop shoulder design where you've got this really nice little V-neck with a rib, and then you've got those small sleeve with an I-cord edge. The problem with this as well is that I made the extra small because I was worried that the yarn was going to stretch out too much. And then I think my gauge swatch is not the same gauge as like I ended up having. So this ended up being smaller than I wanted, and when I tried this on, it's really close to my body, which is not the look I was going for, even though it fits. So what I also will do with this when I block it is I will stretch it out to the max capacity it can give me, and which also means I probably should make it a little bit longer than I think I need to, because if I stretch it widthwise, it's going to lose length. So I really need to keep adding more than I think. Because I don't want something that's super tight and super cropped. It's really not something I'll reach for. And if I were to make a second one of these, I would make the size up and give me more ease. I could totally make this in a pure silk by Knitting for Olive, or some nice hand-dyed yarn, or like linen alpaca silk cashmere, something very drapey. This is definitely very drapey, even though it's looking a bit scrunched up, and it is maintaining its shape because of the merino wool. And it's nice to work with wool when you're working on summer knits because it has more elasticity than all of those other summer fibers, and it's more familiar on your hands and less hard on your wrists. The pattern is beautifully written. It's just so much work, and this was on 275mm needles, which is just, I lost interest halfway through summer, which you may have noticed in my podcast. And as you can see, it's off the needles right now, and it's not even joined to a ball of yarn. So the number one thing that I need to do to finish this is I need to join the yarn and work a couple rounds. And I think maybe I'll do that after filming this, because I think my 275mm needles are free right now. So I will put this back on the needles, and then maybe this will become my new TV knitting, because right now a lot of my sweater projects I'm working on are not stockinette, and I just miss that. I just miss having a stockinette project to work on. So this would be the perfect item to do just that. And it would be really nice to have this finished in time for when it starts getting hotter, as opposed to starting summer knits when it becomes hot, because as you know, when you work them on such small needles and fingering weight, etc., it actually takes quite a while to finish a fingering weight summer item, and then you don't have time to wear it. Next item is the Bibliophile by Alicia Plummer, or Bibliophile. I want to say Bibliophile because that's how I would read it in French. And this is something that I had started in March, and I also talked about it on the podcast a little bit, and it's a fingering weight sweater. I was making it in Kinross 4-ply in the color Scots Pine, which is a really pretty dark blue with heathering of little light blue and black. And as you can see, we've got like a fair amount past the underarm split, maybe halfway through the body. And I was worried about the raglan fit. It's a compound raglan, but my gauge was very off, my row gauge, and so were a lot of people. And I just found a lot of bunching up on one side of the raglans, and I could see that in other photos as well, which demotivated me. And then I was making this sort of roll neck at the top here. I obviously ended up giving up and folding it and knitting it together with the edge, but I regret that decision. So it was supposed to be a roll neck, and it was going to be half fisherman's rib, and it was going to look great, but I was doubting my choice of having a rolled neck. But having talked to some people, knowing that this is Kinross 4-ply, which is so soft and so nice to wear next to skin, it is the perfect yarn to use in a roll neck. So I think what I'm going to do with that later on, because I'm so done with it, is I'm going to undo my neck bind off, put it back on the needles, and actually do the whole length of the turtleneck, because right now the problem is that I think for a turtleneck you want to pick up more stitches, so that you have a larger opening and then it can roll over. Because if you want to make a crew neck and you pick up the same amount of stitches as you would for a roll neck, I think that's too many stitches. Like, I think a lot of people can notice that this is just there's too many stitches and it's just not a pretty neck whatsoever. But I have blogged this to give me an idea of how the raglan would behave, and I do like how it fits on me when I'm wearing it, so I'm happy I give it that block to reignite that excitement for the project. And I know that some people right now, like some of you, are working on that, and that also motivated me. So yeah, the neck was a bummer, but it motivated me to go back to making the roll neck in this beautiful yarn. The body I will make a little shorter than what the pattern calls for. I have some sweaters that I know I can use as a template of when to stop, so I need to figure out that before I get back into it, because I know I like to know what I'm working towards. And then for the sleeves, I also heard that the designer has very long arms, so they would recommend making shorter sleeves, so I'll have to recalculate the decreases. So the way that I intend to finish this UFO basically is by planning out in advance all the length and sleeve decrease rates that I'm going to do, so kind of rewrite my pattern and then follow that so that it can truly be a mindless knit, because now it really should just all be stockinette because the shaping is done, and I will leave the neck fixing till very end because it was just slow. It was very, very slow growing because it's half fisherman's rib on tiny needles, and it was just miles and miles of it because you want it to be a long rolled neck. So yeah, I think again, once I put this back on the needles, it'll be nice to have something stockinette to work on for commuting or TV knitting, and when I don't want to work cables or texture. The next project is the Bunny cardigan by Orlan Zuch, and I'm making this in Studio Donegal Soft Donegal in the color 5521, which is a grey. And I don't know why I stopped making this. I really wanted more cardigans. I really like this cardigan. It's a worsted weight one, so it should be faster than other ones, and I was really hoping for a quick result, but sadly it's obviously not happened. I started this on May 27th this year, and this is what I have so far. So I had split for sleeves and done maybe 2 inches under the arms, and it's crew neck, so you've got those little panels at the front here. They're rolling in right now, but you were going to pick up for the ribbing and the neck afterwards. And it's a raglan, so that was quite straightforward. The yarn is really lovely and plump. I'm quite happy with my gauge. It doesn't feel too dense, which is always my problem when I size down needles. I'm making this on 4.5. I'm actually not sure if I size down from the pattern. The gauge is 16 stitches per 10 centimeters. I think I just got really bored of knitting stockinette flat, and I also know that I was doing some calculations about, I'm making size 3 I think, because I wanted a very oversized look as opposed to doing size 2, which I should have done, but then I was worried I was going to run out of yarn. I think there's body decreases as well, so I need to be mindful. I think I had just done 1 body decrease, but thankfully I placed a marker. So to get back into this project, I need to figure out what I was planning to do regarding size. But I think what I want to do to get back into this is actually put the sleeve stitches on some needles and work a sleeve, because then it'll be in the round. I'm fairly certain I could do it without magic loop for most of it, if not all, and it'll be really motivating to see more fabric on this, because right now it doesn't feel like it's close to being done at all, and I really, really want cardigans, and here's a shortcut. I already have half of one, so making the sleeves should be a really good motivator to keep going. I just need to wind some of the yarn into another cake. This is the only thing I have right now and it's falling apart. I think I was telling myself to finish this first and then pick up for a sleeve, but I think I'm just going to be too impatient and pick up for the sleeve now. And I think right now my 4.5mm needles are busy, so the next thing I finish with the 4.5, I'm going to put this back on the needles. And I'm really excited for that. There's really nothing wrong with the pattern. It was just me being lazy about knitting flat, but yeah, I'm very excited. This was buried somewhere in my cupboards, so picking it back up for this video is making me again realize how I love the yarn and how tweedy it is. It's grey, but it has black, beige, white, a bit of rust. it's really, really nice. So wish me luck to continue this beautiful cardigan, and also hoping that I don't run out of yarn. But having done the sleeves first will then let me adjust the length of the body if necessary. And then lastly, the last garment I have that is on my needles is this beautiful season sweater by Ozetta, which you guys have loved when I've shown you. So I think this is the right way. It's coming out a little more peach here on camera than it is in person. But yeah, I love how this raglan construction looks. Like, how square is this little piece of fabric? I made a modification to have twisted rib here for the neck, and then I will do for the rest of the ribbing. I think I had calculated that I was maybe going to crop this a little bit, so based on another sweater that I've done, and I think it'll look really cool to be like all big and chunky and then cropped. I think that's a really nice look. And I'm making this with the Rarum Natura Gilead in quartz for the main strand, and then some hand-dyed Surrey alpaca from Pigment and Ply, which I absolutely adore. It's giving this really nice sort of subtle variegation where we've got some pinks and blues and yellow, but it's actually yeah, it's really visually interesting, but it's not too princess bubblegum in your face, I think. And the only reason I stopped this really was that I was making that just before autumn, and then I realized that I was really motivated to finish my autumn plans, or to start my autumn plans. And so I just decided to put this to the side and cast on more autumn projects and work on these. And a lot of them actually require the same size needle, which is 4.5 millimeter. So again, this is another one that it's kind of because of my lack of needles and cables that it got put to the side while I worked on some other things that were making me a bit more excited. And I don't feel bad about that, because I was doing a lot of test knits, which were obligations. So I didn't want to work on this just because I had to. And I know that I absolutely love this, and it's not that slow growing, and the stitch pattern is fairly easy. I'm working this inside out, so that way I was doing more knitting than purling. If you want to hear more about that, you can check out the episode where I talk about this. And I actually really like the wrong side of half fisherman's rib, but no, this project is meant to be showing the right side. So yeah, I think this is gonna still stay unfinished for a little bit. Maybe I'll pick it up in winter, because I think it is a pretty winter color, and I really want to use my hand-dyed yarn so I can justify buying more. So yeah, that's it for all of my unfinished projects. I hope that wasn't too fast. It felt quite rushed. I will talk about the swatches next, but yeah, I want to hear your opinions on all of these. Do you agree with my decisions of what to frog and what to keep? Is there something from these that you'd like me to finish sooner rather than later, because you'd like me to show the finished object on camera? Maybe if I knew that you wanted me to work on something, then that would motivate me more, who knows? But yeah, it was quite helpful working through all of these and talk about them to realize which ones I had lost interest in and which ones I still felt something for. And I realized I have quite a lot, so yeah. I'm excited to finish my autumn plans and to cast on some winter plans in the future, but I want to save some time and set it aside to really slot in those unfinished objects that deserve to get finished. Okay, so now let's move on to swatches. I think these are not going to be in order, but we'll just do with what we have. So the first one is for an Ingrid sweater by Petite Knit. I actually do not remember when I started this. It may have been like a couple, like not last summer, the one before. And here's the swatch I had made. It was actually a little tricky to know how to swatch because there's no swatch pattern, which I really appreciate when designers include that in patterns. But here I think I just took the back panel chart of the pattern and just used that as a swatch. This is made with Drops Lima in the color Chalk, and I just wasn't a big fan of it. I think I was already realizing I wasn't a huge fan of pure white as a color for me, and I think this was too dense, and also I really didn't like the way that my mock cables were looking. I know some people talk about how the Ingrid sweater is a little hard to do those like trellis looking X's, same for the Moby sweater. So I think what I need to do is I need to go and look up more on Ravelry notes and maybe on YouTube, if people, or you yourself, if you want to say, have tips on how to make these look neater and more symmetrical. But I think I just pretty much didn't like the yarn that I was like that and what that was giving me as a result. So I ended up destashing the yarn because I had bought a sweater quantities worth of it from Wool Warehouse, but I just didn't want it anymore. So I already made that decision. And in the end, but I really did want the sweater because it looks so nice on other people. So I ended up buying a sweater quantity of Filcolana Alva and Pernilla to hold these together, because Pernilla is a sport weight and Alva is a lace weight, and I think that this would be a good mix. I have seen other people on Ravelry use that combination and it looked really great, and I'll show here a video or photo of the colors that I've picked. It's oatmeal mix and pebbles melange, which I thought would be a really nice, interesting little bit of marling color as opposed to just a pure brown or gray. I want to make sure I have variety in the colors that I choose. So yeah, that's the Ingrid swatch. I really want that sweater, and I think this is going to maybe be one of my winter plans. The next one is also something that I desperately want. It's something that I've been talking about for so long to my boyfriend, and it is the Cargill sweater by Rebecca Clow. So here's the swatch that I've made. I obviously know of Rebecca from YouTube, and I've met her a couple of times because she also lives in Edinburgh. And I fell in love with her Cargill when I saw it on YouTube and on Instagram way back when, so a year ago. And I bought the yarn pretty much immediately. I saw an amazing version from Madeline on Instagram who's knit one, purl one, using that exact yarn. So this is Bichet Bûche, Le Petit Lamb's Wool, and Le Petit Silk Mohair in the color very light blue. And I think this is absolutely my color, and it was quite expensive, so it was very fancy yarn for my standards, like back then and still now. I think it was over £100 for the sweater quantity, and this is a yarn eater pattern. So yeah, I have quite a lot in stash, pretty much 1,500 meters, and I swatched with 4mm, and then I ended up going down to 3.75, and this is what it gave me. And I think I just never really cast it on because even though I'm happy with the texture and the stitch pattern and the density, like I like this swatch, this is what I want to work with, but it was just too precious a yarn. I was nervous about messing it up, and I just never wanted to cast on such precious yarn. And then now that I'm more confident and I would be happy to, it's just that I've had a lot of projects on the needles that were all over texture or cables or lace, and making the Alder sweater for Rebecca, testing that was an experience because it was, again, all over texture and it was just no stockinette round, which this will be as well. So I just know even more what I'm getting into. But I absolutely love the result of my Alder. I really want an all over texture sweater again, and I really want it in this yarn. It's just so stunning. So I have also included this in my winter plans video, which I guess you will see at some point, hopefully soon in the future. But yeah, this little swatch lives on my swatch board just out there in the hall, and it makes me really happy to look at it. And I just need a sweater with it now. The next swatch is for the Field Day cardigan by Ozetta, and I was making this in West Yorkshire Spinners The Croft DK in the color Kova. I think I showed this on the podcast when I got it. And I don't even know if I got gauge on that. I think I didn't, and I would have had to go down a needle size even more, but this was already very dense, I think, and I was just kind of not loving it. I mean, the yarn is fine. It's mid-range, I would say, and it actually is a little more itchy, or it feels a bit rougher than some other wools. Like, it's not merino. I think it might be Blueface Leicester. And I was a bit bored, to be honest. I mean, it's a really nice grey, but I wasn't sure if I wanted a whole cardigan with that. I mean, looking at it now, I think it would be really nice to have, but I don't know. I already don't like working on cardigans, and I thought if I was working on a grey cardigan, I would get way too bored. So what I ended up doing was that I am destashing this yarn. I think it's still up on my Ravelry if anybody wants to buy this off of me. And then I bought some new yarn that I will show here in B-roll from the fiber company Luma, which is more of a summery yarn, which the Field Day cardigan is originally meant to be. The original yarn is a mix of linen and wool, I think, or linen and cotton, which is very, very expensive and totally not accessible to me. So I was trying to replicate that as much as possible, and then one day Luma was on sale at the fiber company, so I jumped on that opportunity and got this beautiful blue color that's called Breton. And I think this will be much more exciting, and it will be nice to have a little summery cardigan as opposed to this boring color. But I've heard people say that the field day cardigan is one of their favorite staples, so maybe I will make another field day cardigan later on that's not in a blue color. I don't know. And I don't know what I would do with this yarn if I don't destash it. If nobody buys it off me, could I make something with it? Because it is a nice gauge, and it seems very sturdy and like it wouldn't pill too much. But yeah, the swatch just didn't fill me with much confidence for the enjoyment of that project that I had in mind. Next project is camisole number 8 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I already showed this swatch on the podcast as well. I was practicing different ways of doing the cables, or rather the knit purl alternation. I was trying to do something called, I think, Eastern purling to try and make that transitional stitch between the knits and the pearls neater because they have a tendency to gape, and it was just a lot of effort, and it's already on small needles. So I was just playing around with that with the swatch, and then I also realized that I don't like how this wool or this color looks on me. This is knitting for Olive cotton merino in putty, I think, and I just didn't think I was gonna wear pure white. I mean, right now it doesn't look bad, and I remember filming the podcast episode where I talked about that and thinking that it looks good on camera. I just don't think in practicality I would wear a white camisole that I've knitted myself. I just think it highlights too much the uneven stitches. It would risk being see-through. I don't know what bra I would wear underneath, or if I would dare go without, etc, etc. So as much as I actually really like this swatch, I just am committed to not using that yarn, which I am also destashing, by the way. If you want to get 3 balls of cotton merino, it's on my Ravelry page as well, which I'll put the link below for the destash page. And what I want, however, is the finished item of the camisole number 8. So what I did is I just changed colors, and again, in a sale, I bought some Knitting for Olive merino in navy blue, which here you can see on screen, and I'm much more in love with that color, much more excited at the prospect of having a very dark navy cabled sleeveless vest as opposed to the white one, which was much more Instagram friendly, that one, the white one, but just day to day, I know I will reach for the navy one much more. So that's where that decision has gone. Then next we have the cameo vest by Orlan Zuch, and I also had shown this swatch on the podcast. This is a little stitch texture that you can see with little knots, as she calls them. And this is a Retrosaria Brusca in B. And the problem with this is that I'm playing yarn chicken. I only have, I think, 4 skeins of that, and I would need 5 to make my size. And my friend Sam went to Portugal, and she was asking, do you want me to bring you anything? And I was like, yes, can you get me one more of Brusca in the color B? And then she went and she said that they were out of stock even there. So that was a bummer. And I think one kind viewer offered me to send me one of the skeins because she has one. So if that was you, can you get back in touch with me? And actually I will take you up on the offer to get one more skein of Brusca. Or if anybody has a skein of Brusca in color B, please give it to me. Because I had started doing this actually. I actually did cast on with another color that looked exactly like that, or so I thought. And I was using the other color for the ribbing, and then I did the body. I started the body in Brusca, but it looked different. It was slightly darker, and I knew that, and I just thought I couldn't ignore it. And the project was quite labor intensive, and I just didn't want to get any further in the body and realize that bottom ribbing was really bothering me in that darker color. So I frogged that and decided I would just still wait to get more Brusca instead of trying to do anything possible like with my limited yarn amount. I think I just need to wait to get the right yarn amount, and then that will give me a project I'm actually happy with. So yeah, and I think the last is Sandnes Garn Borsket Alpaca in a really, really beautiful periwinkle blue. I absolutely love this color, and I had started this because I wanted to knit it up for a knit along that was happening in September, but then I kind of was done with deadlines, and I didn't want to knit something that was so big and fluffy. I think we still had a heat wave in September, so I was not in the mood for fluffy basically. And I think this will be a gorgeous winter sweater, so I'm basically saving that for December. I think it'll be the perfect color to work on. And a Canva viewer actually just yesterday gifted me the pattern for the Sila from Jonah Hietala. So that's a sign that I will cast this on very soon, and I already med gauge. I think I was also maybe tempted by another project, a pattern that uses this yarn. It's from Veronica Lindberg. I can't remember what the name of it is, but it was a cardigan. And it uses that, but I needed one more ball, and I considered, should I try and do it with the balls I have? Should I buy one more ball and risk a different dye lot? Or should I just stick to my original plan, which is to make the Sila? And then if I really want to make that cardigan, I'll just buy 7 balls of a different color, which is what I landed on. It's nice to have the ability to change your mind and switch between projects and assign them different roles, but you shouldn't overthink yourself too much, and sometimes you actually should stick to your plans and actually get things done instead of always switching between ideas. So I was just looking at the swatches here, and they all share a very similar sort of color palette, which is unintended but makes me very happy. So yeah, these are my sort of blue, gray, and white swatches, which is actually funny because then the 2 white ones, the Ingrid and the camisole number 8, are the ones that I ended up not choosing as colors to go for. So yeah, hope that you like this video. I think I will love you and leave you, but I will finish this video with a little bit of footage of me putting into action some of the things that I've decided to do, so that it will keep me accountable, and I will actually frog and put things back on the needles. I think it'll be a nice way to end this video. But thank you so much for coming and for watching this. If you like this concept, then give it a like. It's nice to do different types of content for you guys. And if you just want to watch the podcast and you're looking forward to that, then stay tuned. We probably will have one next week, and if not, the week before, the week after, obviously. So yeah, hope you're doing well wherever you are, and you're keeping cozy, and you're knitting up everything that you want to in those nice cold autumn days. And I'll see you next time. Bye everyone. Enjoy the rest of the footage.